Welcome to UrbArchitect, where we dissect the masters who shape our world. Today we're not discussing a global brand or a skyscraper specialist. We're delving into the work of an architect who is more of a poet, a philosopher of place, a quiet alchemist who transforms leaden materials into golden atmospheres. His name is Peter Zumthor, and in an age of frantic digital imagery and disposable design, his work stands as a profound, almost spiritual rebuke. A reminder that architecture's true power lies not in how it looks in a photograph, but in how it feels to your entire being when you stand within it. To understand Zumthor, you must forget everything you know about architectural celebrity. He is a recluse, a perfectionist, working from the tiny Swiss village of Haldenstein with a team smaller than most corporate firms. Yet his influence is colossal, his buildings revered as pilgrimages for architects seeking a deeper truth. Our story begins not with a computer or a drafting table, but in a woodshop. Born in Basel in 1943, Peter Zumthor was the son of a cabinet maker, and his early education was in the tangible, tactile world of his father's workshop. This was his first and most formative architectural school. The scent of sawdust, the grain of wood under his fingertips, the precise joinery of a well-made drawer. Here he internalized a fundamental truth that would define his entire career. That quality is not an add-on, but is inherent in the making, in the intimate dialogue between the craftsman and his material. This foundational respect for materiality and craft led him to the Kunsthaus, the School of Arts and Crafts in Basel, where he was immersed in the rigorous Swiss tradition of design, thinking that values precision and material intelligence above all else. This education was crucial in developing his keen eye for detail, and his understanding that beauty emerges from truth to materials and construction methods. Later, his time at the Pratt Institute in New York exposed him to the clean lines of international style modernism, a language he would later infuse with his own deeply personal, phenomenological soul, learning to appreciate the clarity of modern forms while recognizing their potential emotional coldness. But the call of the tangible, the specific, the local was too strong. The abstract universalism of mainstream modernism felt alienating to him. He returned to Switzerland, taking a position with the Department for the Preservation of Monuments in Graubünden, a role that proved to be his second-grade education. Here he wasn't just designing new buildings. He was intimately engaging with ancient ones, learning to read the stories embedded in their stones and timber joints. This work deepened his reverence for historical building techniques, for the patina of time, and for the genius loci, the spirit of a place. He learned to listen to sites, to understand that every piece of land has its own memory and narrative that architecture should honor rather than overwrite. It was during this period in 1979 that he and his wife Annalisa established his atelier in Haldenstein, a conscious choice to remain outside the frenetic centers of architectural fashion, to work slowly, deliberately, connected to a specific landscape and community. This decision would become a core tenet of his practice, a form of intellectual and creative sustainability that stood in stark contrast to the jet-setting lifestyle of many architects. The small scale of his office, typically around 30 people, ensured that Zumthor could maintain direct, hands-on involvement in every project, preserving the integrity of his vision from initial sketch to final detail. It is from this quiet base that Zumthor would develop his singular philosophy, best encapsulated in his book, Thinking Architecture, and his seminal idea of atmospheres. For Zumthor, architecture is not about form following function or form following fiction, it is about form following feeling. A building must create a specific, palpable mood, a sensory envelope that wraps around you the moment you enter. It's about the weight of the air, the way light caresses a concrete wall, the echo of your footsteps in a stone hall, the thermal delight of warm wood against your skin, even the subtle scent of a space, whether it's the mineral tang of damp stone or the resinous perfume of aged timber. He designs for the complete sensory experience, composing with what he calls the magic of the real. This obsession with the real with material authenticity is his trademark. He doesn't specify materials from a catalog. He visits quarries for days on end, walking through the stone beds, feeling the different strata with his hands. He tests concrete mixes for months to achieve the perfect hue and texture, sometimes insisting on using water from local sources in the mix to maintain the building's connection to its place. He feels the heft and temperature of thousands of stones to find the right one, insisting that materials have a memory and a story that they bring into the building. This painstaking, almost ritualistic process was never more evident than in his first major international breakthrough, the Therme Vals, completed in 1996 after a decade of work, an astonishingly long period for a project of its scale, reflecting Zumthor's uncompromising approach. Built over the thermal springs in Vals, Switzerland, this is not a building you simply see. It is a building you undergo, a modern-day temple to water and stone that demands complete sensory engagement. Zumthor conceived it as a stone quarry or a primificial mountain, constructing it from 60,000 locally quarried valser quartzite slabs, each one meticulously hand-split to preserve its natural crystalline sparkle. The construction methodology was as rigorous as the design. The stones were laid in courses with precise gaps between them, creating the appearance of geological strata, while allowing for structural movement. You approach it almost as a geological formation, a man-made extension of the mountain, descending into a labyrinthine world of pools, grottos, and passages, some dark and introspective, others open to the sky. The spatial sequence is carefully choreographed to create a journey of contrasting experiences, from the social warmth of the main bath hall to the solitary contemplation of the flower bath chamber, where you lie alone in a stone niche with only the sound of a single stream of water for company. The light is low and direct, filtering through narrow slits, creating a mysterious, cavernous atmosphere where time seems to slow down. The sound of dripping water and your own breath is amplified by the stone, creating a private soundscape for every visitor. You feel the stark contrast between the cool, damp air on your face and the hot, mineral-rich water enveloping your body. Every sensory detail is choreographed, from the smooth, water-worn stone underfoot to the way steam rises into the cool night air from the outdoor pool, creating ephemeral cloud formations that dance in the moonlight. The controversy here was subtle but profound. Some locals initially resisted such a radical, monolithic intervention, fearing it would commercialize their tranquil valley and disrupt the natural springs. But today it is a source of immense pride and a vital part of the local economy, a testament to how architecture can amplify, rather than overshadow, a natural wonder, becoming a new layer in the site's deep history. It is a building that teaches us about time, geological time in its ancient stone, human time in the ritual of bathing, and architectural time in its enduring, timeless presence that seems to have always been there and will always remain. From the primal aquatic world of Vals, we travel to the stark, spiritual solitude of the Bruder Klaus Field Chapel, completed in 2007. This project is a perfect anecdote for Zumthor's methods and his profound connection to memory and community. It was commissioned by a local farmer, Hermann Joseph Scheidtweiler, and his wife Trudy, in honor of the 15th-century Swiss saint Bruder Klaus. Zumthor's design is breathtakingly simple and unbelievably labor-intensive, a true barn-raising for the soul that bridges the gap between vernacular building traditions and high architectural concept. He had local farmers and volunteers build a teepee-like structure out of 112 tree trunks, a communal effort that embedded the building with the spirit of the people it was for, making it truly theirs in a way that a professionally built structure could never be. Then, over 24 consecutive days, they poured layer upon layer of local concrete over this wooden frame, each layer representing a stage of the construction, a ring in the archaeological record of its making, a literal stratification of time and labor that would later be revealed in the final building. The most dramatic alchemical moment came after the concrete had set. They lit the interior wooden frame on fire. It smoldered for 3 weeks, a controlled burn that carbonized the wood and transformed the concrete through intense heat, leaving the interior walls charred and blackened, imbued with the sacred scent of smoke and the powerful memory of that transformative fire. The result is a raw, conical tower that rises from a poppy field like a primordial ruin, a smokestack to heaven that seems both ancient and urgently contemporary. You enter through a small, dark, keyhole-like entrance that forces you to bow your head in a gesture of humility, entering into a space that feels both ancient and eternal, a womb of fire and earth. The floor is paved with molten lead, poured in situ, which collects rainwater that seeps through a central oculus open to the sky, creating a constantly changing pool of reflected light that dances on the blackened walls. The walls are rough, black, and glistening with resin that seeped from the burning pine. Light and weather are the primary decorations. On a sunny day, the oculus projects a sharp beam of light that slowly moves across the space like a sundial. On a rainy day, water drips rhythmically into the lead pool, In winter, snow might dust the interior floor. It is a building about faith, sacrifice, and the raw power of elemental forces. A story told not with words, but with fire, concrete, earth, and light. A testament to Zumthor's ability to translate profound narrative into pure, visceral experience that bypasses intellectual understanding and speaks directly to the soul. This profound engagement with history and memory finds its ultimate urban expression in the Columba Museum in Cologne, Germany, completed in 2007 after a competition win a decade prior. The site was the home of the Diocese of Cologne's art collection, but it was also a sacred archaeological site, a palimpsest containing ruins of a Roman villa, a Gothic church, and the poignant post-war chapel Madonna in the ruins, which had become a symbol of hope and resilience after the devastation of World War II. Zumthor's task was Herculean: to weave all these layers of time into a single coherent vessel without privileging one over the other, creating a space where 2,000 years of history could coexist in respectful dialogue. His solution was a quiet giant, a building of immense presence that speaks in a whisper, its modesty belying its profound complexity. He built a new perforated gray brick wall that rises like a delicate screen, enveloping the old and the new, its intricate weave creating a soft, textile-like facade that changes with the light, appearing solid from some angles and transparent from others. The special bricks were handmade in Denmark to Zumthor's exacting specifications, each one slightly different, giving the facade a living, breathing quality. The new building floats over the ruins on slender piers, allowing visitors to walk on a raised platform and look down upon the archaeological dig below, creating a profound dialogue between the art on the walls and the ancient foundations beneath their feet. The light inside is ethereal, filtering through the thin brick lattice, creating a soft, diffused glow that changes throughout the day, a luminescence that seems to emanate from the walls themselves, eliminating harsh shadows and giving the artworks a mysterious inner light. The atmosphere is one of deep contemplation and reverence, enhanced by the remarkable acoustic properties of the space. Sounds are softened and absorbed by the massive walls and the specially designed fabric-covered panels on the ceiling, creating a hush that feels both natural and sacred. You feel the weight of centuries in the cool, still air, yet the space feels utterly contemporary, proving that modernity and history need not be in opposition. Zumthor didn't try to replicate the past. He created a gentle, protective shell, a vessel for memory, that honors the fragility and persistence of history, proving that a contemporary intervention can be a respectful and powerful act of curation, a new layer that is both of its time and timeless, adding to the site's narrative rather than concluding it. Not all of Zumthor's works are stone in silence. Some are about the ephemeral nature of sound and material, challenging our conventional understanding of what architecture can be. For the 2000 Hanover Expo, he designed the Swiss Sound Box, a temporary pavilion made entirely of stacked timber walls, a giant lumberyard of sound that celebrated Swiss culture not through cliched imagery of mountains and chocolate, but through the more elusive medium of sound. The concept was audacious and pure Zumthor. The building itself was the exhibition. There were no traditional displays, no artifacts behind glass. Instead, as visitors walked through the tall, narrow passages of resonating wood, they encountered different sounds of Switzerland: cowbells, alpenhorns, rustling leaves, folk songs, even the quiet hum of a power station, emanating from hidden speakers within the walls themselves. The timber construction was intentionally simple, walls of stacked lumber held together by steel rods, but the acoustic engineering was incredibly sophisticated, with each room tuned to enhance specific frequencies and create distinct auditory environments. It was a purely phenomenological experiment, architecture as an instrument for auditory experience, a celebration of national identity not through imagery but through acoustic atmosphere, making visitors aware of how sound shapes our sense of place. It was deliberately dismantled after the expo, the wood recycled, leaving no physical trace beyond photographs and memories, a testament to his belief that powerful architecture can also be ephemeral, leaving a memory, a lingering echo, rather than a permanent monument, challenging our obsession with permanence and reminding us of the power of temporary, intense experiences that live on in our sensory recollection, long after the physical structure is gone. This theme of memory, particularly painful and traumatic memory, is central to one of his most powerful later works, the Steilneset Memorial in Vardo, Norway, completed in 2011 in collaboration with artist Louise Bourgeois. It commemorates the 91 victims of the 17th century Finnmark witch trials, a dark chapter in Scandinavian history where mostly women were accused of witchcraft and brutally executed. Zumthor's contribution is a long, minimalist pine frame structure, 410 feet long, like a fishing net drying rack or a skeletal boat hull, stretched over a wooden walkway that jets out into the harsh Arctic Sea. The reference to local fishing infrastructure was intentional. This was architecture born from the specific conditions and traditions of this remote coastal community. The structure is tense and fragile, exposed to the brutal wind and weather, mirroring the vulnerability of the accused, its slender pine members recalling the gallows from which many victims were hanged. Inside this long, narrow hall, Bourgeois placed her installation at the far end, a perpetually burning chair reflected in 7 oval mirrors, surrounded by a blackened charred glass ovoid. The chair represents the empty seat of judgment, while the mirrors multiply the flame to infinity, suggesting both the spreading nature of fear and hysteria, and the countless other victims of similar persecutions throughout history. The experience is harrowing and unforgettable. The narrow, creaking corridor, the relentless sound of the wind and sea outside, the flickering flame reflected into a terrifying infinity. It creates an atmosphere of profound loneliness, persecution, and injustice. The memorial offers no redemption or closure, only acknowledgement of suffering, making it one of the most ethically rigorous works of memorial architecture in recent history. It is architecture that doesn't comfort, but bears witness, making palpable a historical trauma through the sheer, gut-wrenching power of its spatial and sensory composition, a place where the architecture itself becomes a conduit for collective grief and remembrance, forcing visitors to physically and emotionally engage with this difficult history, rather than merely observe it from a safe distance. In a more domestic but no less profound key, we have the Secular Retreat in South Devon, England, one of his few projects in the UK and a manifestation of his long-standing A Room for a Retreat project that he had been developing since the 1990s. It's a concrete house, but Zumthor's concrete is a world away from the cold, impersonal associations of brutalism. Here it is hand-poured, layered, and meticulously formed in situ to have the warmth, texture, and stratification of geological strata, with each lift of concrete visible as a subtle horizontal line in the finished walls, recording the passage of time during construction just as geological strata record millennia of Earth's history. The house is a profound lesson in slowness and permanence, designed as a retreat for contemplation and quiet living, engaging with the lush pastoral landscape through carefully framed views and a material presence that feels both ancient and resolutely of our time. The construction was a masterclass in patience, with layers of concrete poured over weeks, and materials sourced for their specific haptic qualities, the warmth of the oiled oak floors, the cool smoothness of the concrete, the rough texture of the handmade bricks in the fireplace. The spatial organization is deceptively simple, a series of interconnected rooms arranged around a central courtyard, creating a journey that alternates between enclosure and exposure, intimacy and expanse. The controversy or surprise here is simply its immense cost and the sheer amount of time required for its completion, nearly a decade from initial design to completion, a testament to the extreme commitment his methods require, a luxury of time and craft that stands in stark, almost radical contrast to our fast-paced, efficiency-obsessed world, forcing us to question our own values about how we build and live, and what we're willing to sacrifice for quality and meaning in our built environment. Beyond these built works, it's crucial to discuss Zumthor's significant unbuilt projects, as they reveal the depth and consistency of his philosophical inquiries and the challenges of realizing architecture of such uncompromising vision. The topography of Terror Documentation Center in Berlin, for which he won a competition in 1997, was a powerful elongated concrete box that aimed to create a sober, dignified space for reflection on the site of the former Gestapo headquarters. His design was characteristically minimalist, a 3-story, 240-meter-long concrete slab that hovered slightly above the ground, containing all the exhibition spaces while preserving the archaeological remains of the Gestapo cells below. The building's stark, unadorned aesthetic was meant to serve as a neutral background for the difficult history presented within, avoiding any architectural grandstanding that might distract from the gravity of the subject matter. Its ultimate cancellation in 2004 after years of development, political controversy, and budget overruns was a deep professional disappointment for Zumthor and a loss for Berlin's memorial landscape, but the design remains a landmark in his oeuvre, a stark exploration of how architecture can confront difficult history without rhetoric or spectacle, creating spaces for quiet contemplation amidst urban trauma. Similarly, his design for the Kolumba Museum in Los Angeles, though unbuilt, presented a sweeping, fluid form that sought to create a new urban landscape, a single continuous building hovering over a public park, demonstrating his ability to think at an urban scale while retaining his signature focus on creating a unified atmospheric experience. The design replaced the campus of aging buildings with a single elevated structure that created sheltered public space beneath while offering panoramic views of the city from above, a bold reimagining of the museum as both civic connector and cultural repository. So why is Peter Zumthor's work so critically urgent for us right now, especially for American architects and students grappling with a culture of digital overload, environmental disconnect, and a crisis of authenticity? His work is a masterclass in authenticity in a world of simulations. In an era of rendering-friendly, shape-driven starchitecture, where buildings are often designed for their photogenic qualities on social media, Zumthor reminds us that a building's true value is not in its Instagrammability, but in its immersivity, its ability to create a deep, lasting emotional and sensory impression that no image can ever capture. He teaches us about a deeper, more meaningful sustainability, not just of energy efficiency, which his buildings often excel at through their massive, thermally active materials and passive environmental strategies, but of emotional and cultural longevity. He builds things that are meant to be loved, to be cared for, to last for centuries because they resonate with the human soul on a fundamental level. This emotional durability is the ultimate sustainability, for a building that is loved will never be carelessly demolished. His slowness is a radical act of resistance against the frantic pace of consumer culture and the quick turnaround expectations of the profession, advocating for a return to thoughtful deliberation over snap decisions, for craft over convenience. His focus on the local materials, local craftsmen, local stories, is a practical blueprint for a more resilient, low-carbon, and deeply connected architecture, an antidote to the homogenizing force of globalization that has created identical buildings from Shanghai to Dubai to New York. He shows us that to combat the alienation and desensitization of our digital age, we must design spaces that resensitize us, that force us to be present, that reconnect us to the physical world, to the feel of rough-hewn stone, the smell of rain on hot concrete, the sound of our own solitude. In a profession increasingly dominated by digital tools that can create any form imaginable, Zumthor's work serves as a crucial reminder that the most powerful architectural experiences emerge not from formal complexity, but from material truth and sensory richness. Peter Zumthor's legacy is not a style, but a sensibility, a way of being in the world as an architect. He is the architect of the inner world, proving that the most powerful spaces are those that move us, that make us more aware of our own humanity, our senses, and our place in the long arc of time. He leaves us with a profound challenge: to stop building for the fleeting image and start building for the enduring experience. To remember that before a building is a design, it is a dwelling for the human spirit, a backdrop for life, a vessel for memory. And in that sacred task there are no shortcuts, only the slow, patient, loving attention to the magic of the real. Thank you for watching UrbArchitect.